What's up, guys? My name's Brandon, and welcome back to Apple Weekly. In this episode, we're going to be discussing even more new iOS 18.2 features and changes. We're going to talk about Apple's next product category and why it's going to be here sooner than we thought, bad news for the iPhone 17 Air, a crazy AirTags story, and much more. And as always, if you want to continue seeing these Apple Weekly episodes every week, make sure to subscribe to the channel down below and also check out the Apple Den newsletter. Okay, so let's start with even more new iOS 18.2 features and changes. And also, we are going to be seeing the final release of iOS 18.2 a little bit later than expected. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit and why that is the case. But let's talk about some of these additional features here. And there's actually a big one for the iPhone 16 series. So if we go into our settings here and then down to display and brightness, and then if we go down to the bottom of display and brightness, we have a brand new toggle here for camera control that says require screen on. And this is a big deal, but it's not as big of a deal as the next feature I'm going to show you. But what this does is it allows you to launch the camera control even when your device is locked. And this is big because now you can take your iPhone 16 out of your pocket while pressing on the camera control button, and you'll have, camera control right there and ready to go, even if your device is not unlocked. I'm going to turn that off so I don't have to have my screen on in order to launch camera control. But like I mentioned, that's not the big new feature here with iOS 18.2 Beta 3. And that's because with Beta 3, we now have a much improved visual intelligence. So visual intelligence is the feature that's exclusive to the iPhone 16 series, where you press the camera control button and then you get the option to search or, look up with ChatGPT, basically just things that you're not really going to use very often like Google Lens. But now with Beta 3, we finally have a legit feature that makes visual intelligence worth using, at least for me. So now if you point your camera at a location, whether that be a restaurant, a store, whatever, take a look at what pops up top. So it will show the name of that location, and you can tap on that now and it will show you different things here. So first off, up top, it will show you the reviews, it will show the hours, it will show what type of restaurant it is, it will show the photos for that restaurant, and then down here, you can easily access the menu, the website, you can call them all from this built-in UI just from holding my phone up and pointing it at that restaurant. I didn't press anything. I just held it up there and that pops up because it uses your location to determine where you're at. And of course, it uses the visual intelligence to detect what you're pointing your camera at, what building you're pointing your camera at. Because of course, the alternative to this is loading up Google and typing in these things. But this makes it so much easier because again, you can press and hold on the camera control button and you can just pull your phone out and point at it and boom, you press two buttons and you're calling, or press one button and you see the menu. Like, that's so convenient. And this is actually going to make me use visual intelligence now. I didn't use it before. I didn't really care about it before, but with this feature, I will absolutely be using it. Oh, and by the way, here's another example of Pizza Hut. So you can actually Uber Eats and DoorDash straight from this UI here, straight from the visual intelligence UI. It will take you to the DoorDash or the Uber Eats page straight from here. That's awesome. Now, there's also a change in the music application. So if you go ahead and add a song to your queue here, so if you go to play next on this, and then you go into the queue and you swipe to remove it, we have a new glyph icon now. So it's just a little circle with a minus in it. Before, it just had text that said remove. There's also a couple of small changes in the wallet application. So if you go to your Apple Pay Cash card, we now have new text underneath of the balance. So it says green dot bank and it does say FDIC insured, and that text underneath right there. And also, I mentioned this before, but I wanted to mention it again because I see new logos pretty much every day now in the mail application. So if you get mail from a noteworthy business like the USPS right here, you can see I do have a logo for them instead of just the standard glyph icon, which is nice. Mail's going to look amazing when every sender has their own custom icon in there. And there's also an interesting change in the Safari application. So if you go down to Safari and go to the edit button down here and go down to background image, you will notice that we have multiple new background images. And these are not going to be downloaded by default. You will have to go in here and manually download these for you to be able to apply them to your start page in Safari. And what's interesting is that I did not see these on macOS, the latest version of macOS, but when I applied it here on iOS, it also transferred over to macOS. So pretty interesting, and some of these actually look really good. Like I like these top two a lot. So I did also want to touch on the image wand feature. So this is the feature where if you have something written out or something drawn out, so you could just draw a circle down here and it will basically just make whatever you have written out or what you have typed in. So if I select that tool right there and do a little circle, it will, pick up on what was said and make an image out of that. So you can see it picked up swamp, mountain, and car stuck, and now it's going to make an image out of that. Now in my video, I mentioned that the sketch feature is not there yet, where you can draw something out like this right here. And if you circled that, it would create an image for you based on your little sketch drawing. So in my video, I said that's not available. However, it kind of is. The trick here is that you do also need to have text in that note. So if I select this right here and there's text in there, so I'm going to go to my image wand here, and I'm going to select my image right here. So I'm just going to circle that. And you can see that it will also pick up on the text. So it's going to use that image. You can see to the left there, it is picking up on that image and it's using that. And you can see it did also pick up on the other text as well. So it does kind of work, but the trick here is that you do need to have, text in that document as well. It cannot be just an image, at least not yet. But I have to say it does a pretty good job. I mean, every time I've done Image Wand in beta 3, it has been so much better than what we saw in previous beta. So Apple is continuing to improve these generative features with Apple Intelligence. But I will say it is still taking a toll on my battery life and the heat of my device. My device is hot now, mainly from, generating images with Image Wand. Now, there's also been an update to the AirTags feature. So I did mention this briefly in my beta 3 video, but I want to mention it again unless you missed that very quickly here. So if you go to your Find My application, you go to an AirTag or a device, and you go to the Lost AirTag section, which is new in 18.2. If you go to Share Item Location, that will pull up this splash screen right here, and if you tap on continue, it will allow you to get a link and send that link to a third party like a police officer or an airline, and they can track your items. Now, what came out this week was Apple put out a press release about this, and they mentioned that they have multiple airports already signed up and ready to use this feature when 18.2 rolls out. So they said that more than 15 airlines serving millions of people globally will be accepting Find My item locations as part of their customer service process for locating mishandled or delayed bags. And more airlines will be added over time. That is a big deal. I think a lot of people are underestimating how big of a deal this is, because now you're not going to have to literally be with a customer service person at one of these airlines and show them, hey, look, here's where my AirTag is. Let's look for it. Let's, come help me find it. They're going to have access to, the location of your lost items. You won't have to go back and forth with them. That's just going to be a big headache, removed from a lot of people who have lost luggage before. And of course, especially for people who are going to lose luggage in the future is what I should say, because they're not going to have to deal with the headache anymore like we had to in the past. Now, I did also want to update you guys on the bugs that I showcased in my What's New video for beta 3. So the first one was the lock screen bug. And I can tell you right now, thankfully that has been fixed. So it did mess up my lock screens a little bit. You can see this one's not fully filling in the screen as it should, but you can see that has been fixed. And if I switch over to a different one, you can see it works fine and my device does not get dark and think it's in do not disturb or sleep mode. So for some reason it was stuck in that sleep state even after a reboot, but it did fix itself eventually after 2 days. And here's what's weird. My stickers also came back after 4 days. I did not get my stickers back until 4 days after installing the update. So I am not sure at all what was going on with beta 3, but something was very odd with not only the initial install, as you guys saw in that video, but it took days for those bugs to be fixed and nothing happened. I didn't do anything different. They just started working again. We did also see Unicode's latest documentation, which shows the new emojis that are coming with iOS 19 next year. So you can see what some of these emoji might look like. I think that smiley is going to be amazing. I will definitely be using that, but you can see a lot of these other ones as well, including Bigfoot, the dolphin, the apple, all of that. The treasure chest is nice. So what do you guys think about emojis? This is where I'm kind of conflicted. Do you guys care about new emojis anymore now that Genmoji is a thing and now that you can create stickers and use those as emojis? Do you really care? Do you really get hyped for new emojis every year or not? I really want to know what you think because I'm seeing a new trend of people caring a lot less about the default emojis because now they can use Genmoji and now they can use stickers that they download online to use as emoji. So let me know your thoughts. Now, also this week, Apple did push out a firmware update for the AirPods 4 and the AirPods Pro 2. And I did update both my AirPods and literally nothing has changed from the previous version. I really tried to see if anything has changed because Apple doesn't tell you in the release notes, but I tested it and I have two AirPods 4s. So I tested it on the old version and on the new version and no difference at all on either one of those. But I guess if you did have any type of bugs or any type of issues, those could be resolved with this firmware updates, but Apple didn't say anything that has changed. Also this week, we saw a big release for content creators or anybody who does video editing because Apple released Final Cut Pro 11 for the Mac. And this includes several big, highly, requested features such as the magnetic mask feature, which is going to be awesome for tracking. You have the captions, auto captions, where you can transcribe what's in your video to captions. They don't look great. They're actually pretty ugly. It's just a black background with white text. I don't think anybody's going to use that because it's not visually appealing, especially on shorts, but at least that's a start. And then we do also have spatial video editing and more. Apple did also release Final Cut Pro for iPad at 2.1 with some additional new features. Also for the Mac, we saw a big update to the ChatGPT application because now it will work with applications. So in Xcode, for example, it can actually reference all of your existing code and you won't have to copy that code and paste it into ChatGPT. It's going to be able to read what's in your application and you can ask questions against what it already knows about your project. That is pretty amazing, and it also works with more than one app at a time. So it can work with Xcode and Terminal at the same time. It will be able to reference what's going on in each of those applications, and you can run queries against that, which is amazing. And then I have to mention this because I just thought it was so amazing, but this week we also saw The Weeknd release his Open Hearts music video for Apple, the Immersive Music Experience. And this was absolutely incredible. So if you don't have a Vision Pro, go to the Apple Store and check out this visual experience, this music experience. Ask the employee if you can watch The Weeknd's music experience because it's really that good and that's incredible. I got chills while watching it. Anyways, going back to our iPhone, let's talk about the performance on iOS 18.2 Beta 3 because you can see I did just run a Geekbench test here and we scored a 3507 on the single core and an 8705 on the multi-core. So check out that multi-core score. That is the highest score we've had, period, on 18.2 and 18.1. So 8705, I don't think we had 8700 at all. No, we only had one 8600 and that was 8695 on November 7th. So pretty strong performance here from Beta 3. It's hard to tell if it's really that much better than Beta 2, honestly, but the scores don't lie. So the scores are pretty solid there. Again, you can't base everything off of that, even if they are this high, but I still wanted to point that out. Now, one thing I can tell you for sure that's not great is the battery life. Battery life for me continues to be very bad on 18.2, and I think it's because of how I use my device. So I use ChatGPT, no joke, at least probably 30 times a day. Like I use it all the time on the iPhone and I access it through Siri. Like I don't even have to say ChatGPT anymore. I just ask a complex question and it automatically asks ChatGPT for that query. That automatically goes to ChatGPT to answer that. So I use that all the time. I ask a ton of follow-up questions most of the time. So that's probably what's leading to a lot of my bad battery experience. I also use Genmoji a lot. I also use the Image Playground a lot. I use Visual Intelligence a lot now. So a lot of these Apple Intelligence features that are more intensive are definitely taking a toll on battery life in 18.2 Beta 3. Now, if you don't have an iPhone 15 Pro or later, you let me know in a comment down below how battery life is. But for me, it's just not been great here on Beta 3. I think it's about the same as Beta 2, which was not very good. Okay, so now let's talk about what to expect next from Apple. So next up is going to be iOS 18.2 Beta 4. And I would expect that to come on Monday the 18th. So this past week, we saw Apple release a beta software update on a holiday. That's how you know Apple is in a rush to get this software out there to the public before the end of the year, because everybody wants these AI features that were promised to them. So Apple should be like this. But yeah, so I would expect the Monday releases to continue, and that's probably going to be on the 18th. And then after that is where things get a little bit tricky, because if you remember, as far as the final release goes, we heard Mark Gurman mention that December 2nd is going to be when we can see 18.2. And that went against everything that I said previously, because I said that we're going to see 18.2 on either the week of the 9th or the week of the 16th. So one of those 2 weeks is what I said all along, but ever since Gurman said the second, I was like, okay, I guess that we might see the RC then after the fourth beta. But now we actually got a new source. This is kind of hinted at by a British carrier named EE. So they said that they were going to be continuing a feature on December 9th. So that's interesting, and there are other, things that were pointed out by Mac Rumors as well that lead them to believe that we're going to see this update on December 9th, not on December 2nd. So it's hard to say who is going to be right in this case. So there's going to be one of two scenarios. So either we see beta 4 next week, and then the week after that, on the week of the 25th, we see beta 5 if we're going to see it on the 9th, or we're going to see the RC on the 25th if we see the final release on the 2nd. Because again, keep in mind, the RC version comes out 1 week before the final public release. So we'll have to wait and see, but it looks like at this point, we are going to see it either the week of the 2nd or the week of December 9th. That is for the final release. All right, so now let's move on to the latest Apple news. And let's start with Apple's next product category and why it's going to be here way sooner than we thought. So this news comes from Mark Gurman, and he mentioned that Apple's next device is going to be an AI wall tablet for home control, Siri, and for video calls. And he says that it's also going to include Apple apps such as Safari, News, Music, Calendar, Notes, and Photos, where the device can turn into a slideshow display. And this is going to be positioned as a competitor to the Google Nest Hub and the Amazon Echo Show. So Gurman describes this device as having a 6-inch screen, and it's going to allegedly resemble a small square iPad with a front-facing camera, a built-in rechargeable battery, and internal speakers. And as far as the software, the interface, it looks like it's going to combine elements of watchOS and standby mode on the iPhone together. So that can actually look pretty nice. But obviously the primary design, the primary goal of this home device is going to be for voice interaction with Siri and of course Apple Intelligence. So I don't know how immersed into the smart home, the HomeKit ecosystem you guys are, but pretty much any device I buy these days has to be HomeKit compatible. So the fact that this is coming is going to be a big deal, especially if we can use the camera, the built-in camera on these home pads is what I'm calling it, like a home pad. If we can use that as like a security camera for the room as well, that's going to be amazing. So I cannot wait to see what this looks like. And why I said it's coming earlier than expected is because it looks like this could be coming as soon as the spring. And if you remember from a few months back, Gurman did also report on the robotic arm home device. That is actually an upcoming version of this product. So that's like the next generation of this product. And that of course is not expected until 2026. And if all goes well with this home pad, it looks like Apple is going to expand into home security cameras. So this comes from Ming-Chi Kuo, and he says that Apple's going to release its own smart home cameras in 2026 with AI features. So he says, quote, "The smart home IP camera scheduled for production in 2026 is designed to integrate seamlessly with other Apple hardware products via wireless connectivity." So that will also be a big deal because I personally have the Google cameras, and I'll tell you right now, I trust Apple a lot more with my privacy than Google, especially when it's inside of my house, inside of my office. So if Apple releases that, that will be a day one purchase for me. And then Ming-Chi Kuo did also touch on the upcoming AirPods. So he mentions that, quote, "AirPods are being repositioned to focus on health management, with future models integrating more health management features." And of course, he did not elaborate on those AirPods health features, but we have heard about this previously, such as the temperature sensor inside of your ear. So that could be referring to that and maybe even more. So we've had all good news so far, but here's some bad news. Maybe, it depends on how you take it. So the iPhone 17 Air that we've been hearing about for a while, it looks like that's not actually going to be as thin as the iPhone 6, like some early rumors indicated. And this news comes from Yo 1122, and he cited industry sources who said that Apple has run into problems making the new iPhone 17 model sufficiently thin. The device's reduced thickness is apparently dependent on manufacturing a battery with a thinner substrate, but Apple is now facing technical compromises. So it looks like we're not going to see that iPhone 6 level thinness on next year's iPhone. So that's unfortunate, but at least it still, hopefully in theory, will be skinnier than all the other iPhones. And then finally, just as tradition, we have another crazy AirTag story. So this time, a city council candidate in Australia, who was also a real estate agent, noticed that nearly 80 of his political posters kept disappearing, and he had no idea who was taking them. And you already know where this is going. So since he suspected somebody was stealing them, he decided to hide AirTags in some of those remaining posters to track them in case they were taken again. And sure enough, 2 of those tagged signs vanished soon after. And when he checked the Find My application to see the location, they showed up outside the home of his political rival, another city council candidate. So of course he did contact police and they did a mini investigation, and then they ended up arresting the 35-year-old city council candidate rival, who of course denied it and said that it was a setup. But then things got really weird. So the rival who got arrested for stealing those signs, he actually received a forged legal letter in the mail that claimed that fecal matter had been found on the stolen sign and that it requested that he give a sample of his own, fecal matter for testing. And obviously that letter was fake, and the other guy said that he had no involvement in this. Now, ultimately, the election results were very anticlimactic because both candidates lost their bids for the council seats. But without the AirTags, this rivalry would have gone unnoticed. So thank goodness for the AirTags in the Find My application. So anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, I would appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up. Also make sure to subscribe. I have a lot more Mac videos coming out and a lot of good iOS and iPhone videos coming out at the end of the year as well. So stick around and I'll see you guys next week.